This hot button topic is Christopher Emdin, urban education professor at Columbia University Teachers College. Thanks so much for coming in to talk to us tonight, Chris. So 25 public schools, one charter school on the chopping block. Tell us, what do you think the impact of this will be, and where are these kids going to go to school?
I think it's a great question. I think the impact really is going to be that you're going to have a bunch of students who are in schools, who are comfortable in the places they were in, having to be displaced and having to go elsewhere. And I think that's just the sort of superficial piece of what we have to deal with here. We also have to deal with the fact that the buildings where these schools were once housed, that once housed one school, will now house, 3 or 4 schools in the same building in a school that's equipped to only serve one school.
Yeah.
And so we'll have an issue where that's going to be really challenging as well.
Yeah, it gets pretty complicated, Christopher. You understand that, and we also know that many of the schools, for example, that are slated to close are very low performing. There are many who are asking the question why people are fighting to keep them open. Tell us about that.
Well, the really interesting thing is that we hear this term low performing quite often, but there's never really a clear definition of what low performing is. And so if you're looking explicitly at the test scores, in some cases the test scores aren't so great in these schools. But we also have to look a little bit more broadly. And one thing that's very important about city schools is the reputation it has, the connection that folks have to the schools in their community. Big schools like Columbus and that have been there for ages and have been staples of the community, to close them down is probably not a great idea. And oftentimes replace it with a place that has the same problems that the previous school did.
So Chris, last year the teachers union and parents filed a lawsuit stopping the closing of many of the same schools that are, in fact, they're fighting for once again because they're on the chopping block again. So who's to say that this process isn't just going to continue year after year?
I think that's a brilliant question, and the thing is that we don't know if it'll happen year after year. But what's important for us to recognize is that the reason why that process went on last year, where there was a fighting back and forth, because it was ruled that it was inequitable to close these schools without a clear justification for why they were being closed. The formula for who is going to stay open and who hasn't is not really transparent. And that's why a lot of folks in the communities are so frustrated, because you're closing a school that's been in the community for ages, that in some instances are the only places where the kids find solace, and now you're not telling us exactly why they're closing. And that's really frustrating. And to be frank, we don't know whether or not this will go on again. And, the core of this is that rather than closing schools and reopening them and sort of going through the same cyclic process, we are better served finding ways to make sure that the students in schools' needs are met academically. And if that happens, then we won't have to worry about closing and reopening. We'd be meeting the needs of the students in the schools.